Well, hi everybody. I'm Ace Stanley. I'm here with Ali Benima, and you are watching the Electronic Intifada live stream. Now, we are delighted to be joined by Bryce Greene. Bryce is an organizer, writer, and contributor to the media watchdog Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, or FAIR. He's contributed to numerous independent media outlets, including the Electronic Intifada. Welcome, Bryce.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Hi, Bryce. It's nice we've communicated in every way except face-to-face like this, so it's nice to finally do that.
Absolutely. It's good to see you both.
Thanks. Thanks for coming on. And Bryce, your most recent analysis for Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, FAIR, is titled Shielding U.S. Public from Israeli Reports of Friendly Fire on October 7th. And you write that since October, the Israeli press has uncovered damning evidence showing that an untold number of the Israeli victims during the October 7th Hamas attack were in fact killed by the Israeli army. And you say that the Israeli army's responsibility for Israeli deaths has been a repeated topic of discussion in the Israeli press, accompanied by demands for investigations. But the most US readers have gotten from their own press about the issue is a dismissive piece from the Washington Post about so-called October 7th truthers. Of course, you're referring there to the article we've talked about previously on this live stream, the hit piece on the Electronic Intifada, the Gray Zone, and other independent outlets who've done this kind of reporting. We've obviously reported extensively on this topic at the Electronic Intifada, as you kindly acknowledge, but talk to us more about what you are seeing and not seeing in the Western media in terms of this question of friendly fire and perhaps other elements of what's happening in Gaza.
Absolutely. Most Americans have this image of their press as, obstinate and challenging power and really trying to muckrake up real stories to help the American people understand the world better. But that doesn't square with the reality of actual media performance. As you say, in the Israeli press, things that challenge the official narrative of October 7th have been routinely reported and widely discussed. But in America, you very rarely see any discussion of this. And as you said, the most discussions you see of this are either glossing over it as not an issue or actively attacking the people who report on this sort of thing. Now, this is a strange phenomenon because in Israel, the press there is actually under military censorship. So one might expect that the press there would serve a more overt propaganda role than they do here in the United States, but that's not the case. Even without military censorship, American editors and journalists, they understand the areas that they're not supposed to go into. They understand the topics that they're not supposed to talk about, and they understand that they can easily get ahead if they attack the people who do talk about these sorts of things. And so the media in the United States has really served to engineer consent for Israel's brutal genocidal attack on Gaza. These reports about the friendly fire on October 7th, they're important because they challenge the narrative that all of these civilians that were killed on October 7th were killed by Hamas, and that the attack on October 7th was designed to kill as many civilians as possible. Reports from Hamas and reports from about these friendly fire incidents, they seem to at least challenge that narrative. But American journalists, even if they truly believe in the narrative that October 7th was an unequivocal terrorist attack, they don't seem to want to defend it by comparing their versions and other official versions with what's been coming out in the Israeli press. The instinct has been to suppress it and to attack those who do report on it. And so this goes along with all these other aspects of American media performance. It's become sort of a dark joke on the internet about every time these Western media outlets report on the death of a Palestinian, they'll use the passive voice and they'll abstract away any responsibility that Israel obviously has for these deaths. It'll be something like a Palestinian child struck by bullet during clashes or something like that. Whereas if they report on an Israeli death, it'll be, Hamas killed this Israeli. And they know what they're doing. These people go to journalism school. They know what the effect might be on the American public, and they choose to report this way anyway. And it's hard to believe that this isn't intentional and that they're not actively embracing their role as cheerleaders for Israeli apartheid and genocide.
Yeah. One of the things that's been admitted or at least discussed in Israel is the use of the Hannibal Directive on October 7th. Now, that's, I mean, as our viewers and listeners will most likely know because of our ongoing coverage of this, the Hannibal Directive is the Israeli military doctrine that allows their military forces to use any level of force necessary to prevent Israelis from being taken captive, even if that means killing those Israelis in the process. And that's in order to prevent an enemy from gaining bargaining chips that can be used to force Israel to release prisoners it may be holding. Bryce, have you seen US media outlets, and particularly the New York Times, addressing the question of the Hannibal Doctrine?
I've yet to see the New York Times describe the Hannibal Doctrine in as many words. There have been scattered reports from the Times about how generals have ordered their troops to fire on areas where they know that Israeli civilians are being held. But this has been, again, glossed over. It's not been described as anything worth a headline. If it is discussed, it's discussed in several paragraphs down, where editors and journalists know that people typically don't read to. And it's not emphasized, and it's not opined on or remarked upon in any serious way. And so, again, this seems to be a deliberate campaign of suppressing the actual facts of the day of October 7th in favor of the official Israeli narrative.
Well, I mean, it's as you've pointed out, the U.S. media is to borrow a phrase, being more Catholic than the Pope, because, as we've pointed out, these matters are discussed in the Israeli press. I mean, we shouldn't give the Israeli media too much credit. The vast majority of it is war propaganda and genocidal war propaganda, but nonetheless, we do see questions being raised in Israeli media that are just absent in the US, and the same is true in Canada, the UK, and much of Europe, the so-called West. My question for you is, and you've talked about how journalists in the US are doing it knowingly, and they seem to know what the limits are of what they're allowed to say. But my question is, I guess I have two questions. Who's the target of this propagandistic coverage? And is it working from the perspective of those doing it? I mean, how do you see the state of public opinion and the reaction to this coverage? I know that's a broad question, but what do you think the effect of it is?
Well, that's an important one. The idea that these articles, these propagandistic reports, are going to change the minds of people like you or me who have done the reading is just laughable. Anyone who has above a 10th grade reading level is able to read through these reports, check the facts against what the sources say, and weigh the evidence in a serious manner. But these articles aren't meant for those people. These articles are meant for the people who are either completely fanatics or just completely incurious about the actual facts of the matter. It's very easy for someone to see a headline attacking October 7th truthers and then see that as justification for them never to actually read the articles that challenge the official narrative, to never actually investigate for themselves what these reports say, what this UN report says, what all these civil commissions have been saying. The people who write these reports and write these articles, they understand that the majority of the public does not read these sorts of things. They understand that it's easy to poison or inoculate the public against these reports. And so they're not for serious people doing investigations. They're not for people who want to to actually debate the facts in a serious manner. They're just meant to nudge people away from the truth and therefore support the Israeli line and the campaign that they're committing. It doesn't seem to be any doubt about that.
Yeah, I mean,
Asa, why don't we talk about Asa? Why don't you? I'd like to hear what Bryce thinks about the issue we've just written about and just published moments before this live stream. Why don't you talk? And this is also a chance to update the audience on a story, a scandal we've been covering. So Asa, why don't you tell? Let's go into that.
Yeah. So closely related to the Israeli atrocity propaganda and the issue of the Israeli death toll, and as well as the issue of friendly fire and the Hannibal doctrine that you address in your piece, is the issue of Israel's debunked propaganda narrative that there was a campaign of mass rape carried out by Palestinians during the 7th of October military assault. And we've closely followed this story here on the live stream, and Ali has repeatedly debunked this narrative. And now Ali and I have written this new story with the latest on the issue, and you can see it on the screen here. UN report launders Israel's fraudulent mass rape propaganda. And it's about the new UN report by Pramila Patten, and how it is being touted in the mainstream media as shoring up Israel's propaganda narrative on this issue. I read the report in detail, and it contains no new evidence. And actually, technically, it contains no evidence at all, because it makes the distinction that it presents information instead, that quote unquote they received information. And the details in it are actually the recycling of prior debunked claims. Now, strikingly as well, what I found was that Pramila Patten, the UN official who led the report team, according to a contemporary Israeli press report from February, repeatedly expressed solidarity with Israel during her week-long visit to the settlements near Gaza in January. So, for our readers and listeners, if you go to electronicintifada.net and read the article, you can see all the details there. It's on the front page of the site at the moment. But maybe just a question for you, Bryce. Have you seen how the corporate media has reported on this issue, and what is their attitude towards it?
Well, I've been following these stories of mass rape from the mainstream media for quite a while. I think your listeners and viewers might remember the fact that a big push for these stories came as part of Israel's justification for continuing the attack after the end of the first ceasefire, after the end of the first hostage deal. As that deal ended, Israel started ramping up its attacks again. And at the same time, you started seeing in the press these stories of mass rape, which are very obviously, yeah. And much like the people talk about the timing of the bombing of Rafah and the Super Bowl, and the only time the Israelis rescued a hostage was timed right after a commercial. The same way, I mean, this push on these stories was timed to be with the resumption of hostilities. And so these stories are largely based on about 4 or 5 different accounts. And each of these has various degrees of credibility. But the UN report, what they found, interestingly enough, was that they didn't even have access to video evidence that demonstrated the claims that they were making. They didn't have access to firsthand witnesses who were demonstrating the claims they were making. And if you actually read the report and you go to the findings sections, there's about 4 pages of findings. There's not a single footnote in that section that could link one of the claims that's made to a source, to an interview or a media report or a document or whatever. So the reader who's reading this report is left to simply take Pramila at her word. And another interesting fact about Pramila is that she was also one of the people who promoted the idea that Russians were using Viagra as a weapon of war during their invasion of Ukraine. This was
and that same claim was also recycled from Hillary Clinton's State Department when they made that same false claim with respect to Libya in 2011 in order to gin up support for the Obama administration's regime change war in Libya. And then subsequently, US intelligence officials and UN investigators said, we found no evidence for this. So it's, we're told constantly, it's become this kind of refrain that sexual violence is endemic to war. Where there's war, there's sexual and violence. And that's something we don't want to make light of. But by the same token, where there is war propaganda and atrocity propaganda. And that pattern keeps repeating. And with respect to this UN report, it's incredible to me, and this is something we also talk about in the article that we just published just before the live stream came on, that repeatedly in the report, Pramila Patten says that she had no investigative mandate, that most of the information she received came from so-called Israeli national institutions. When she toured the Israeli settlements in southern Israel near the Gaza boundary, she was accompanied, and this is in photos that were published by the Israelis, she was accompanied by Yossi Landau, the man from the Jewish extremist group Zaka that repeatedly fabricated atrocity propaganda about murdered babies and children, and about a fetus being cut out of its mother's stomach, debunked stories that we have talked about on the live stream before. And she also says in the report that the UN team did what they call a medico-legal assessment, meaning sort of a looking for medical evidence in countless photos and videos of rape and found none. That's stated in the report. They saw no video showing a sexual assault taking place. This is all in the report. And yet, the media spin on this report. And very importantly, as Asa mentioned, the UN report states that several of the most widely cited incidents of claimed sexual assault are unfounded, including one story that has been repeated ad nauseum in practically every press report, including and especially the New York Times report, the infamous New York Times report led by Jeffrey Gettleman back in December. And this is the claim that 2 teenage girls were found raped and murdered in kibbutz Be'eri. And the UN report says this is unfounded. And also, The Intercept, doing its own reporting in the last couple of days, also said categorically that this report is unfounded, and that officials in kibbutz Be'eri have categorically denied this and other allegations of sexual assault. And yet, the media is spinning this UN report as if it bolsters and confirms Israel's claims. How is that possible? Did they not read the same report we read?
Well, there's no good reason to expect them to have actually read the report. I mean, these reports aren't designed to be read and critically examined. They're designed to have a conclusion that can be quoted in a media report that will advance the interest of the Israeli state. If you actually look at the report, a lot of it is them going through and talking about how they couldn't find any evidence. A lot of that is debunking some of the more lurid claims that were made by media reports. A lot of it is talking about how or justifying the reasons why they haven't yet found any victims for this. But the report's conclusions, were written, it seems, in a completely separate vacuum than the actual body of the report. If the report's conclusions were to reflect the actual evidence that they found, it would have looked a lot differently. Journalists, they don't need to read the report. All they need to know is that there's a report from someone that their editor believes is credible, and that they can just quote word from word from that report, regardless of whether or not it makes sense or it's coherent or if it adds up. And so that's really how this pipeline works. You have media reports based on unverified sources, and then though you have an organization that makes a report based on these media sources, saying that, well, now it's in a report, so now it's true. And then you have more media outlets reporting on that report. It's a very horrific circle that they have there.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the points that the Twitter user 𝐓𝐴 has made, who, along with us independent journalists, EI and the Grey Zone and Mondoweiss, 𝐓𝐴. I mean, we've talked about 𝐓𝐴 before. Twitter user with a squirrel avatar. We don't know who they are, but they are a very established Twitter user, a very popular Twitter user, who has actually unearthed some new findings that no one else has come up with before. And 𝐓𝐴 has made this same point that you're making, that it's kind of self-repeating narrative. It's being fed.
Hold on, Asa. Hold on, because I know the point you want to make, but I actually want to show, because it's quite funny, this. Tamara, let's put up the headline that appears in Haaretz today. Can we do that? Yeah, so this is a story that was published in Haaretz, which is considered the respectable newspaper of record in Israel. The unhinged denialist frenzy around Hamas's sexual violence on October. And so this piece is attacking those of us who have questioned this narrative and pointed out the complete lack of evidence for it. Let's focus in on that one paragraph, Tamara. And I'll just read this for those who are listening. And this is from Haaretz. Relying mostly on one another as sources, why bother with exhaustively documented information from people on the ground when you can conjure up your dogma from thousands of miles away? Groups such as the Intercept, Mondoweiss, Electronic Intifada, and something called Yes, in an unhinged article written by an expert on bacon and junk food, try their best to conjure a conspiratorial swirl of doubts and delegitimization. Remember, just asking questions and doing my own research. So what this Haaretz writer is claiming is that the Intercept, Mondoweiss, the Electronic Intifada, and others who have debunked the mass rapes claim, really, we don't have anything to back that up. We're all just citing each other and going around in a circle and ignoring, documented information from people on the ground. What do you make of that, Bryce? Is that a fair description of reality?
Well, I actually read this article this morning, and I did a semi-detailed Twitter thread talking about it. I went through and looked at what they actually had to criticize about the article, or about the outlets that they're attacking here. And much like the Washington Post article attacking truthers, this article doesn't actually link to any of these outlets or anything they have to say. They don't address a single specific claim that any of these outlets make. All they do is they again seem to want to dissuade people from reading these outlets and dissuade people from even looking at what these outlets have to say. And the idea that, oh, they're just all citing each other, I mean, A, that's how journalism operates. Different people find different information and they put it together in a coherent narrative. But B, it's also hypocritical, because what they're doing is they're simply citing these reports on sexual violence that, again, just cite media reports without any evidence. And so it's just completely ridiculous. You can look at this article, you try to find something that they disagree with from you, from Mondoweiss, from Grey Zone, from Yes, which featured an excellent article about these topics. These are detailed articles with dozens of citations, with several claims that can be fact-checked. You can either say that this is true or this is false. But what they do is they say, well, all these outlets are just lunatic, crazy. They might as well have called them truthers or Holocaust denial, because the goal is the same. They want readers and the general public to hear these outlets' names, associate them with the negative sentiment, and then avoid them. And that's what this article's designed to do.
And then let's just show. Sorry, Asa. I was going to show the Bret Stephens article. Should we just do that quick?
Yeah.
Because it's in the same realm. And this is an article that appeared in the New York Times by their columnist Bret Stephens, who is well known as an extreme right-wing supporter of Israel and a New York Times columnist. And as you can see, it's called The New Rape Denialism. And can we just show the first couple of paragraphs of that piece? Because what he writes is extraordinary. In the first two paragraphs, I'll just read the second paragraph. He says, Hamas denies that its men sexually assaulted Israelis, calling the charges lies and slanders against the Palestinians and their resistance, and Hamas's fellow travelers and useful idiots in the West. That presumably means journalists who actually do journalism. Most of them self-described progressives. I guess that's the confirmation he's talking about us. Parrot that denialism in the face of powerful and deeply investigated evidence of widespread rapes, documented most recently in a United Nations report released on Monday. Okay, so what does he link to as the examples of powerful and deeply investigated evidence? If we actually click on the links, let's take a look. Yeah, go ahead and click on those links, Tamara. Yeah, that one. You can see he's linking to the debunked and fraudulent New York Times article that we've talked about already so many times, and to the UN report that we've just discussed. So again, they're going full throttle in attacking the journalists and the messengers and trying to dissuade people from actually reading any of the journalism.
Yeah, it's like this. It's this sort of self-repeating pattern, right? It's been laundered from the Israeli government into the New York Times and now into the UN system, because unlike our articles, the difference between our articles and the New York Times's article and even this UN report is that we cite all our evidence. We're very, very specific. We always provide sources for to back up what we're saying, whereas even this UN report is making assertions and specifically saying that they don't have evidence, that this is not evidence, it is information received, and they won't even confirm who the information is received from, although it's very clear that the vast majority of it, at least, is coming from the Israeli government or Israeli national institutions, as they claim, as they put it in the report.
No, it's a very strange thing. Again, this article, this New York Times article, was also cited in that 𝐓𝐡𝐞 piece. It was also held up as an example of serious investigative reporting. And interestingly enough, they say that the only gripe that people who criticize the New York Times article have is a distinction between systematic mass rape and incidental instances of sexual violence. But I mean, if you even look at what The Intercept reported about the Daily, the New York Times' own fact checkers not being able to verify the claims in this article, I mean, that should shut that down immediately. But who knows if this 𝐓𝐴RETZ writer read the article or read anything about the article or was just given a series of links and just told to attack these guys. But the idea that all these reports will just link to each other, and any example of a false claim can just be hand waved away because of the other reports that are of course serious and well researched. But if you look at each of these individual reports, they really fall apart upon closer scrutiny. And anyone trying to make claims should be held to the standard of evidence, and extreme claims should be held to the level of extreme evidence. Here, there are extreme claims being made and very, very minuscule evidence being presented. And I think that it should give anyone pause. It's not what the Haaretz calls a conspiratorial frenzy. That's the term that they use. It's just people reading, again, at a 10th grade level. If you're able to do that, then you can easily figure out what the facts are.
Yeah, I'm going to assert that the fact that we're seeing this article, the article in Haaretz attacking us by name, along with other independent outlets, and the Bret Stephens piece clearly referring to us, although he doesn't mention our outlets by name, as a sign of panic and as a sign of recognition of the failure of this narrative. Again, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and even Haaretz, they don't go after people like us unless we are really starting to damage their ability to push this propaganda off without challenge.
And just to remind our listeners and viewers that the central problem that Bret Stephens and Haaretz are ignoring about this New York Times article, I mean, amongst many, is that the very fact that the woman at the center of that article, Gal Abdouche, her family, you could see in that photo there, the head of that article, have said that the New York Times reporters misled them, that Anat Schwartz, the main reporter on the ground, misled them as to the nature of this article, and that they are insistent that their daughter was not raped before she was killed, that Gal Abdouche was not raped before she was killed, despite the fact that is the central claim in this article, making these insinuations that she was raped by Hamas. That her family is saying that did not happen, and now the other two women pinpointed in this story,
the two teenage girls who allegedly were raped and murdered, and The Intercept has confirmed. And this was first reported by Mondoweiss back at the beginning of December, that the story of the two teenage girls raped and murdered in Be'eri, and it was a claim that was made by an Israeli army medic, remember. So this is somebody who is involved in the part of the military that's engaging in genocide. Back in December, Mondoweiss showed how this story couldn't have happened, that there were no two victims that fit that description in Be'eri, in kibbutz Be'eri. And now, as The Intercept has reported, the authorities in kibbutz Be'eri have confirmed that this did not happen. So it's all falling apart. And also, I mean, we could go on about this, but I want to ask Bryce about some of the other issues he's involved in. But I'll just say that with Anat Schwartz, one of the New York Times journalists, the novice journalist who was put on this particular story, and I don't think we had a chance to talk about this on the live stream because of the timing. I think it came out the same day that we did last week's live stream, that as The Intercept reported, she spoke at length in Hebrew to a podcast in Israel about the reporting of this story. And she revealed in that they called up every single emergency room or specialized facility in Israel that's charged with caring for victims of sexual assault, and they called the rape crisis line in southern Israel. They checked with all these institutions, and every single one of them told them, we did not have a single report of sexual assault or rape on October 7th. Not one. That should have alerted the editors at the New York Times that the story here was not one of mass sexual violence, but one of massive fraud. And they should have then said, wait a minute, let's stop and let's find out what's going on. Instead, what they did is, okay, you found no victims, you searched every possible place in Israel where there could be victims, and you didn't find any, then you got to manufacture some victims. And that's exactly what the New York Times ended up doing.
Yeah, can I just add a word about the motive of this as well, Ali, before you sort of transition to the other issues? It's very striking. Israel's UN ambassador, Gilad Erdan, is saying this week, he's making direct threats against the UN. And what he said in a statement this week is, quote, "The meaning of a ceasefire is to lengthen the suffering of the hostages. Any call for a ceasefire is blatant support for Hamas to continue their sexual violence." So in other words, Israel is trying to smear those of us calling for an end to its genocide in Gaza as rape apologists. So that is the reason why this campaign is being, manufactured, why this fabricated claim has gone out, and we've seen there, there was a report about this in the Grey Zone, the latest report in the Grey Zone about this, the Israel lobby in Washington, D.C. is also pushing this line about to emphasize that rape by Hamas took place in order to push back against the growing calls around the world for an end for a ceasefire in Gaza and an end to the genocide. So that's what this is all about at the end of the day.
Yeah, but before we move on, I'd love to hear Bryce's reaction to this particular story that they focus tested what messaging would work best in terms of this. Bryce, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, this guy who's in charge of this focus testing, according to this Grey Zone article, is a man named Frank Luntz, who is a longtime Republican pollster who's found good ways to sell horrible policy to the American public, finding which phrases or which words elicit the largest emotional reaction. And he was used to help push through Bush administration policies, like the invasion of Iraq. And he was, he's one of these longtime blob goons who's just doing the bidding of evil. And now he seems to be back at it by figuring out the best way to convince people in America that they need to support Israel. You see all these terms that they're using, holding Hamas accountable. This is our 9/11. It's a war for humanity. I mean, these phrases don't come out of nowhere. The public relations industry for the last 100 years has been one of the most sophisticated industries in public opinion and public manipulation. You don't become a billion-dollar industry by not doing anything useful, or at least useful to someone. And they find the ability to conduct these focus tests and target the messaging for maximum potency to be extremely useful. This campaign of genocide is bolstered by this lab-tested, focus-tested propaganda. And there's another graphic on this in this article that shows the impact of certain phrases that describe what's going on or what happened in Israel. And as you see, raped civilians and massacred civilians had the most reaction from the public. And so I'm sure after these focus tests were conducted, the Israeli propaganda strategy adjusted accordingly. I mean, why wouldn't it? That's their job. So again, this just shows the degree to which all of us, especially in America, are subjected to constant propaganda that is designed, tailor-made to get Americans to support this genocide. And again, like I said earlier, it's not about people who do the reading, people who follow the news every day. It's not about people like you or me who try and evaluate the facts on their merits. This is for the general public. This is for people who are too busy to sit down and read 14 electronic Intifada articles a day to figure out what's really going on. If you're an average person and someone tells you that there are raped civilians and we have to go stop them, well, then your natural reaction is going to be, well, obviously I support this. And that's how evil manifests itself, and that's how it persists.
Yeah, that's a I can't disagree with you, and I know that we're going to come back to this topic. It's not going to go away because the propaganda is necessary to Israel and the genocide. So we're going to have to keep debunking it and pushing back on it. But while we still have you, Bryce, I want to talk about some of the other issues that you've written about and have been involved in addition to your contributions for fairness and accuracy in reporting. You are a doctoral student and an organizer at Indiana University in Bloomington. And in January, you wrote about the situation at Indiana University for us at the Electronic Intifada, where your friend and mentor, Professor 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜 was suspended. He is a tenured professor in political science. And you wrote, his removal is not only an attack on free speech and academic freedom, but it is designed to suppress pro-Palestine speech at a time when Palestinians are suffering one of the most devastating attacks in their history. And it's more important than ever for Americans to speak out against injustice in Palestine. And Professor 𝐓𝐡𝐞 was suspended in December over supposed mistakes on a form he filled out to reserve a room for a speaking event featuring the author 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐿. You wrote also that there is good reason to suspect that 𝐓𝐡𝐞's targeting has less to do with minor bureaucratic formalities and more to do with his role in assisting movements for justice on campus. Can you bring us up to date regarding this situation and what the reaction has been at Indiana University?
Well, this, as you said, it was a very troubling situation to have, again, an important professor, an important member of our community being barred from his activism over what appears to be political reasons. I don't think anyone seriously believes that the university was very concerned about, again, these minor bureaucratic errors, allegedly. What they're doing is they're creating an environment where people are afraid to speak out, where people know that if they step out of line, they could get the eye of the university on their backs. Now, they might not have any sanction levied against them, but dealing with that is difficult, and people don't want to do that. So creating this chilling effect has been their goal. But there has been a lot of pushback from the community, from the faculty, from other students at the university. It's pretty clear what's going on, and people are trying to fight against it. Even professors who aren't diehard supporters of anti-imperialist movements are very concerned that one of their colleagues can be summarily dismissed for what appear to be politically motives. They're very concerned, and so they're organizing about it. And it's very heartening to see the petitions for 𝐓𝐡𝐞 and the petitions for Samia Halabi, who was removed from the university's upcoming art exhibits for similar political reasons. It's heartening to see that those actions are galvanizing the public, or the university community, into serious action. Now, one thing we've learned since 𝐓𝐡𝐞's dismissal was that after about 2 to 3 weeks after the 𝐓𝐶 𝐄𝐥𝐿 event, the university entered into a partnership with the Anti-Defamation League and other pro-Israel organizations to help combat anti-Semitism on campus, so to speak. And this seems to be in response to a letter from our congressman, Jim Banks, who sent a letter to the university demanding that they investigate anti-Semitism, demanding that they take some steps to make the environment safer for pro-Israel views. And so this happened in late November, and 𝐓𝐡𝐞's dismissal came in December. Now, there's no direct evidence tying these two together, but given the issues at play and given the pressure campaign that the university was embarking upon, it's difficult not to see these two things as linked. And the university seems to be doubling down on its relationship with both the military-industrial complex and the Israel lobby. And you can see it in their investments. You can see it in the companies that they have speaking on campus. But again, all of this is an educational experience for both the students and the faculty. The biggest education they're getting isn't necessarily in the classroom, but it's learning about what these institutions that they're operating in, how they function, what pressures are acting on them, and how they can fight against it. Many students I've seen have told me that they were interested in some other career path beforehand, but watching what happened in Palestine, watching the university's response to 𝐓𝐶, watching the university's crackdown on pro-Palestine speech, it's radicalized them. It's made them decide that they want to fight for liberation for all. And I think that that is what organizers should be trying to do, trying to funnel this outrage, trying to funnel this confusion and this stupefaction into serious organization building. There's only one way that any liberation struggle has ever succeeded, and that's by people getting organized. And so that's what I hope that we're seeing here.
And we certainly hope that too. And you are involved in some of that organizing across Indiana, and we know that the situation at Indiana University is not dissimilar to what's happening at campuses across the country, where there is repression, there is smearing of anyone who speaks about Israel's genocide of Palestinians as an anti-Semite, and that this is being really driven from the top down with members of Congress pushing for McCarthyite witch hunts and smear campaigns at campuses across the country. There's a great deal more to talk about on all of this, and I hope we can have you back to do that soon, Bryce. And in the meantime, you are doing incredible work at FAIR, Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. People can find your analyses there. And I read I read your piece on the coverage of Palestine and Gaza, but you also have really good analyses of how the media act as a propaganda mouthpiece on a whole range of issues, including Ukraine and Russia, among others. So I really hope that people will take a look at that, and that we would love for you to write more at the Electronic Intifada on all of these issues. So I hope you'll do that too. And how can people find you on social media?
Well, I'm mostly can be found on Twitter at the Greene BJ, Green with an E at the end. I also have a Substack that's linked on my Twitter, and that's mostly where I sit.
Yeah, and if people just search for your name, Bryce Greene, they're going to find a lot of your writing and articles, because I know I did when I did that. And so I hope they will become more aware of your work. And thank you so much for coming on today, Bryce. We're going to leave it there. And I hope that we'll continue the conversation soon. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit like, leave a comment. These engagements help us with the YouTube algorithm, and it helps us to get around Silicon Valley censorship as much as possible. It does make a difference. You can also support our journalism by going to electronicintifada.net and clicking on donate now. Thank you.